Hey there, Mike Robbins here, coming to you live on this Tuesday afternoon. It's a little after 1 o'clock Pacific time as I'm recording this. If you're joining on Facebook or LinkedIn or even YouTube, nice to see you live. Feel free to chime in on the comments and just tell me how you're doing and where you're at. If you're watching the video of this after, feel free to do the same. Today, I want to talk about the importance and the challenge of self-care. So this is something I did a podcast a couple weeks ago about this, but wanted to come on live to talk about it because if you're anything like me and just about everybody I know and talk to and work with, you probably know how important it is to take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but you may be having some challenge with that these days. It's not a new challenge. It existed obviously before COVID, but I have found it to be incredibly challenging over the last 18, 19 months during COVID to really get into a rhythm and a routine of self-care that works for me. Now, this is not the first time in my life that I've been challenged by this, having 2 babies and writing 5 books and traveling around the country and the world, speaking over the last 20, almost 21 years. Prior to that, working in sales and being a professional baseball player and a college student, and just a bit like my life from the time I can remember. Hey, Teresa, good to see you. My life is usually pretty full and has been since I was a kid, with school and sports in those days and, social things. And then, as a pro athlete and then, living in San Francisco, working for an internet company in the 90s. And then the last almost 21 years having my own business and raising a family. And so again, whatever the circumstances of your life are, I'm assuming you can relate to some degree to having a busy, full life and the challenge of self-care in general. And for me, it would kind of ebb and flow. And I sort of, go in and out of times when I would take better care of myself and times I would take not so good care of myself. And sometimes it would depend on the time of the year or how busy I was or what was going on. But often it would just be, I would get into these cycles, like positive cycles where I was doing a lot of things and practicing a lot of things, and the momentum of caring for myself, there was just some positive inertia, and then more negative cycles where I would, stop exercising, stop eating well, stop meditating, stop writing in my journal, stop going for walks and connecting with Michelle and doing certain things that would really not only bring me joy, but really kind of keep me grounded and have me take care of myself. And, I think when the pandemic hit back in March of last year, like a lot of people, maybe you included, I was pretty freaked out. My business, for a living, I speak to groups of people in person and all events got canceled. And, we had a book coming out and different things going on that were disrupted, and it was super scary. And then there was the fear about the world and people I know and love and myself and health and the economy and all the things, right? And I think for the first couple of months of the pandemic, I was just trying to survive, trying to get through to the next day, to the next week. And I was doing a lot of emotional eating. I was doing a lot of, hand wringing literally, and then not a lot of moving around. But even as things have settled down to some degree, and I don't mean that in any way to minimize the stress and the challenge of these last 18, 19 months and all that people have been dealing with and are still dealing with, myself included, even as the rhythm of pandemic life, and once we got out of like hardcore quarantine and lockdown and things have been opened up and, I've gotten vaccinated and we've traveled a little bit as a family, and I've traveled a little bit for work, and I'm out seeing people and going to events and having meals and all this stuff. Like, it still feels like the rhythm and the routine of my life, maybe your life, a lot of people's lives, is still in this weird, disrupted place. And not like an excuse, but just like a reality of like, I haven't been able to find a really good rhythm and routine for caring for myself. Again, I've said this many times, probably here on social lives, but definitely on my podcast. And when I've talked to people and speak, it's like, if you'd have told me 19 months ago, hey, for the next 19 months, you're barely going to travel. You're going to spend most of your time at home. You get to eat dinner with your family almost every night. You'll just be working in your office. I wouldn't have understood why or how that would work, but I would have thought from the self-care standpoint, I would be super dialed in with my meditation practice and my exercise and food and rest. And that hasn't been the case. Although the last couple weeks, as I've been digging more into this, I have started to notice a shift. And so I wanted to talk about this. First and foremost, I just want to say, if you're struggling or you find it continually difficult to care for yourself, you're not alone. I think the vast majority of people that I know and have talked to and have opened up to me about this, it has been a struggle. And not to, again, use the pandemic as an excuse, but just like, I don't know that we're fully aware of the amount of trauma we've experienced through this time. And again, some of us have been more significantly impacted than others, but collectively, again, I was talking about this earlier today on a virtual program that I was doing, but it's kind of like, the frog in the water. You've heard the analogy of put the frog in the boiling water and they jump out because it's hot. But if you put the frog in the cool water and then turn the heat up, the water will start to get hotter and hotter and hotter and eventually boil and literally kill the frog. And the frog won't even realize it's getting so hot. And I feel like that's how we've been through this experience. Like, the water is really hot around us, but we don't even fully realize it because we've just been sitting in this pot for so long and the heat's been getting turned up and turned up and turned up. So there's 5 things that I've been focused on more recently myself. And as I think about how we can care for ourselves, first and foremost, acknowledging the challenge of it and how difficult it can be, and giving ourselves some permission to acknowledge that. But the first step in the process, I think, is awareness, just being aware. How am I feeling? What am I doing or not doing? What level of challenge am I having with self-care or not? But just sort of telling the truth to ourselves, to anyone who we confide in and open up with. But we just have to be aware. I was sharing actually earlier today this story from, I went to see a chiropractor a number of years ago, and I've worked with different chiropractors over the years. But I was having some back pain and neck pain that were a little different. And what the chiropractor was saying to me is, Mike, look, what you want to have is more somatic awareness. Like, notice your body posture, your position, notice how you're hunched over when you're working or on your phone or driving your car, doing different things. Because the more somatic awareness you have, the more you can make adjustments in the moment that'll positively impact not only your posture, but ultimately how you feel. So we want to have more awareness. Kind of my mentor, Richard Carlson, who wrote the great book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and It's All Small Stuff, and that whole series of books. Richard passed away a number of years ago, and there's actually a great movie on Lifetime that's about to come out, I think next week, about his life and his death. But his wife, Chris Carlson, has written a number of books since his passing, and one was about her journey through grief. So I'm actually looking forward to watching that film and seeing that, because Richard had such an impact on my life before I even met him, when I read his books, but through knowing him and through his mentorship. But he would talk a lot about lowering your threshold to stress. So becoming more aware of some of your stress triggers, as opposed to, we think the idea is to expand our capacity to deal with stress. No, we want to start to be more aware of what are the things that are making it challenging for me to take care of myself. What are the things I want to be doing or find it hard to do, not from a place of self-judgment, but actually just from a place of awareness, so we can make some change. Because if we're not aware, we can't do anything different. So the second step is compassion. So first being aware, then having some compassion, empathy for ourselves. Look, you're not alone in your struggle to care for yourself. In general, it can be challenging, especially these days. So again, not an excuse, not a letting yourself off the hook in some not taking responsibility kind of way, but just having compassion. Like, this has been and continues to be a challenging, stressful time. There's a lot going on. The rhythm and routine of work, of life, of parenting, of just moving around the world continues to be strange and disrupted, even if we've gotten used to it. So just have some compassion for yourself. You're not bad. You're not wrong. You're not weak. You're not evil. You're just human. And this may be a challenging time to really care for yourself, as I know it's been for me. The third thing we can do is ask for support. Ask for help, ask for support. One of the things that has made a big difference for me just in the last few weeks is I reached out to a couple friends of mine and let them know, look, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with food. I'm struggling with exercise. I'm struggling with my weight. I'm struggling with my energy. I'm struggling caring for myself in the ways that I want to. And I know a lot of things. I've been educated on a lot of things. I just can't seem to put it together in the motivation. So just reaching out, I could use some support. Do you have any ideas, suggestions? Can I just talk to you, confide in you? Right? The answer is always no if we don't ask. There's so much support out there for us, not just as it relates to our self-care, but in general. The fourth thing is for us to actually get into action, take some action. Now, not obsessive action, not manic, crazy action, which I know quite a bit about, but thoughtful, deliberate action. And again, if you haven't been doing much movement, let's just say as an example, much exercise, could you take a walk around the block? Could you do a few jumping jacks or push-ups in your bedroom or office? Could you do some yoga or whatever? And maybe if you have been, but could you take some action, something a little more consistent, something a little more challenging, whatever it is, wherever you find yourself as it relates to food and what we put into our bodies? Could we make a few different choices to add something or eliminate something else? Again, healthy, conscious. If we're wanting to quiet our minds a little bit more, could we put our phone down or put it in the other room when we go to sleep? Could we start writing in a journal if we don't journal? Could we take a few minutes in the morning to meditate? One of the actions that I took about a month ago, I've been struggling with my meditation practice off and on. And my uncle actually recommended this to me it was last spring. He was like, hey, do you use Headspace, the app? And I was like, well, I've tried it and it seems cool, but I had this sort of arrogant notion of, I've been meditating for 25 years. Like, I don't need to use an app. That's for beginners. But I just was like, maybe I'll try it and check it out. And you know what? I have found Headspace to be incredibly valuable. And I used it off and on in the spring and over the summer. And about 30 days ago, I started a meditation sort of course on Headspace that's 30 days long. And I'm like, let me just do this one particular course. It's actually on mindful eating, which it felt like I was addressing two things at once, shifting my relationship to that as, eating and food, but also getting more into a regular daily practice of meditation. And that's been really wonderful. I wake up in the morning and I get excited to do my morning meditation with Headspace. So can we take some action, even if it's small action, micro movements, as we might call them? And then finally, can we have some accountability? Accountability can be tricky. I have a love-hate relationship with accountability, but having accountability, someone that we check in with, someone that we're accountable to. When I used to work out at the gym, which I don't anymore, I just do exercise and workouts around my house, but having a trainer or having a workout buddy was always super helpful because it would get me to go or get me to push myself. I've written 5 books and I struggle with the motivation to write, to be honest with you, but having the accountability of a deadline and an editor and the expectation of it is what's allowed me to actually write and publish those books over the years. Without any accountability around that, I would probably still be banging around with a bunch of good book ideas, but no actual books, because it's the accountability that often will force us into the discomfort of doing something maybe that we're a little hesitant or resistant or scared to do or need some inertia, but having someone to check in with. So as it relates to your self-care, is there someone in your life who you can buddy up with or partner up with? Even if you don't do activities together with them, just check in. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm committed to doing today or this week or this month. And then some sense of checking in with them. I either did it or I didn't do it. No shame, no judgment, just accountability. We all need accountability. And the more we embrace accountability, the more positive change we can make, the more support we get. So awareness, number 1, compassion, number 2, asking for support, number 3, taking action, number 4, and number 5, accountability. So those things are the 5 things I'm thinking about and trying to practice in different ways as I can, as I look to take a little bit better care of myself, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, acknowledging that this has been and continues to be a really challenging time to do that. So wherever you are right now in your current iteration of self-care, my hope for you, my prayer for you, my blessing for you is that you can be compassionate with yourself, get the support that you need, take some action, have that accountability that supports you so that you can and we can really move forward through this process as best as we possibly can. Look, it's important to also acknowledge struggling with self-care to some degree, while most of us do in one way or another, is a privilege. It means we're not actively in crisis mode and we can think a little more broadly, a little more holistically of how we want to care for ourselves. But even if you are dealing with a crisis of any kind, which I know many of us are to some degree, being able to do simple things to take care of ourselves, super important. And if things are going relatively well, all things considered, the more we can invest in a healthy way of caring for ourselves, the more it benefits us on every level. So thanks for watching, whether you watched live or you watched the video of this after. I try to come on and do once a week lives here on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, but you can always check the videos after the fact on any of those channels. And hopefully we're connected through my website, mike-robbins.com, and or my podcast and email list. So until next time, take care, be well,